jumping into part 1 and chapter 1. Let's dive in. The Quantum You, chapter 1. Early physicists divided the world into matter and thought, and later matter and energy. Each member of those pairs was considered to be entirely separate from the other, but they're not. Nevertheless, this mind-matter duality shaped our early worldview, that reality was essentially predetermined and that people could do little to change things through their own actions, let alone their own thoughts. Fast forward to our current understanding that we are part of a vast, invisible field of energy which contains all possible realities and actually responds to our thoughts and feelings. And so we ask ourselves, can I use my mind to create my reality? If so, is that a skill that we can learn and use to become who we want to be and create the life we want to experience? Let's face it, none of us is perfect. Whether we'd like to make some change to our physical self, emotional self, or spiritual self, we all have the same desire. We want to live as an idealized version of who we think and believe we can be. When we lie in bed at night, reviewing our day and our efforts to be a more tolerant, less reactive person, we don't just see the parent who lashed out at our child for failing to quietly and quickly submit to a simple request. We envision either an angelic self whose patience was stretched like an innocent victim on the rack, or a hideous ogre laying waste to a child's self-esteem. Which of those images is real? The answer is all of them are real. And not just those extremes, but an infinite spectrum of images ranging from positive to negative. How can that be? For you to better understand why none of those versions of self is more or less real than the others, I'm going to have to shatter the outmoded understanding about the fundamental nature of reality and replace it with a new one. Always, in order to change, we have to come to a new understanding of self and the world so that we can embrace new knowledge and have new experiences. Can we agree on that? I'm going to read that again. Always, in order to change, we have to come to a new understanding of self and the world so that we can embrace new knowledge and have new experiences. Your past shortfalls can be traced at their root to one major oversight. You haven't committed yourself to living by the truth that your thoughts have consequences so great that they create your reality. Let me say that again. Your past shortfalls can be traced at their root to one major oversight. You haven't committed yourself to living by the truth that your thoughts have consequences so great that they create your reality. The fact is that we are all blessed. We can all reap the benefits of our constructive efforts. We don't have to settle for our present reality. We don't have to settle for our present reality. We can create a new one whenever we choose to. We all have that ability because, for better or worse, our thoughts do influence our lives. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I wonder whether most people really believe this statement on a gut level. If we truly embrace the notion that our thoughts produce tangible effects in our lives, wouldn't we strive to never let one thought slip by us that we didn't want to experience? And wouldn't we focus our attention on what we want instead of continually obsessing about our problems? Think about it. If you really knew that this principle were true, would you ever miss a day in intentionally creating your destiny? Would you ever miss that opportunity? Would you ever waste a thought? Would you ever think a negative thought? Would you ever think a destructive thought again? To change your life, change your beliefs about the nature of reality. I hope this book will shift your view of how our world operates convince you that you are more powerful than you knew, and inspire you to demonstrate the understanding that what you think and believe has a profound effect on your world. Until you break away from the way you see your present reality, any change in your life will always be haphazard and transitory. And haven't we all been down that road before? Starting with New Year's resolutions, and you want to change and you're going to do this better. And the older you get, you think, I'm looping and looping and looping and still producing the same results. And not only that, but I continue to draw people and circumstances to me that keep reinforcing that belief or those beliefs that aren't so very positive. And you think, how can you change? And I can't pray my way out of this. I can't purpose my way out of this. What am I doing wrong? In order to do that, though, you'll need to be open to a new interpretation of what is real and true. To help you shift this mode of thought and begin to create a life of your choosing, I have to begin with a bit of cosmology, the study of the structure and dynamics of the universe. This chapter just might test your willingness to abandon ideas that have, in a sense, been programmed into you for many years on a conscious and subconscious level. Once you gain a new conception of the fundamental forces and elements that constitute reality, I'm going to say that again. Once you gain a new conception of the fundamental forces and elements that constitute reality, it won't fit into that old perception in which the linear and the orderly rule the day. Be prepared to experience some fundamental shifts in understanding. In fact, as you begin to embrace this new outlook, your very makeup as a human being will change. It is my wish that you will no longer be the same person you were when you began. Obviously, I'm about to challenge you, but I want you to know that I'm entirely empathetic because I too have had to let go of what I thought was true and leap into the unknown. To ease into this new way of thinking about the nature of our world, let's see how our worldview was shaped by the early belief that mind and matter were separate things. Always matter, never mind. Always mind, never matter. Connecting the dots between the outer physical world of the observable and the inner mental world of thought has always presented quite a challenge to scientists and philosophers. To many of us, even today, the mind appears to have little or no measurable effect on the world of matter. Although we probably agree that the world of matter creates consequences affecting our minds, how can our minds possibly produce any physical changes affecting the solid things in our lives? Mind and matter appear to be separate. That is, unless there's a shift in our understanding about the way physical, solid things actually exist. Well, there has been such a shift, and to trace its beginnings, we have to consider the 17th century mathematician and philosopher René Descartes, who developed many concepts that still have great relevance to mathematics and to other fields. In retrospect, however, one of his theories ultimately did more harm than good. Descartes was a proponent of the mechanistic model of the universe, a view that the universe is controlled by predictive laws. When it came to human thought, Descartes faced a real challenge. The human mind possessed too many variables to neatly fit into any laws. Since he couldn't unify his understanding of the physical world with that of the mind, but he had to account for the presence of both, Descartes played a nifty mind game, pun intended. He said that the mind was not subject to laws of the objective physical world, so it was completely outside the bounds of scientific inquiry. Essentially, Descartes started a belief system that imposed a duality between the concepts of mind and matter. For centuries, that division stood as the accepted understanding of the nature of reality. And helping to perpetuate Descartes' beliefs were the experiments and theories of Sir Isaac Newton. The English mathematician and scientist not only solidified the concept of the universe as a machine, but he produced a set of laws stating that human beings could precisely determine, calculate, and predict the orderly ways in which the physical world would operate. According to the classical Newtonian physics model, all things were considered solid. For example, energy could be explained as a force to move objects or to change the physical nature of matter. But as you will see, energy is much more than an outside force exerted on material things. Energy is the very fabric of all things material, and it is responsive to the mind. And it is responsive to the mind. Considering that these cherished beliefs held sway for centuries, it took some revolutionary thought to counter Descartes and Newton. Einstein, not just rocking the boat, rocking the universe. About 200 years after Newton, Albert Einstein produced his famous equation E equals mc squared, demonstrating that energy and matter are so fundamentally related that they are one and the same. Essentially, his work showed that matter and energy are completely interchangeable. This directly contradicted Newton and Descartes and ushered in a new understanding of how the universe functions. Einstein didn't single-handedly crumble our previous view of the nature of reality, but he did undermine its foundation, and that eventually led to the collapse of some of our narrow, rigid ways of thinking. His theory set off an exploration of the puzzling behavior of light. Scientists then observed that light sometimes behaves like a wave, when it bends around a corner, for example, and at other times it behaves like a particle. Stay with me here, this is important. How could light be both a wave and a particle? According to the outlook of Descartes and Newton, it couldn't. A phenomenon had to be either one or the other. Quickly it became clear that the dualistic Cartesian Newtonian model was flawed at the most basic level of all, the subatomic. Subatomic refers to the parts, electrons, protons, neutrons, and so on. Remember from your high school science classes? That make up atoms, which are the building blocks of all things physical. The most fundamental components of our so-called physical world are both waves, energy, and particles, physical matter. Depending on the mind of the observer, we'll come back to that. Depending on the mind of the observer, to understand how the world works, we had to look to its tiniest components. Thus, out of these particle experiments, a new field of science was born called quantum physics. We will begin to explore quantum physics in the next episode. Bye for now.